the Chellberg family living here on the farm, they were living here for about 50 years, and they already had a pretty good diverse farm. They had crops in the fields, they had an orchard, they had a vineyard, they had animals, they were selling eggs, they were selling butter, selling milk. But in the early 30s, they had a dilemma. They needed more cash. Where does a diverse farm get more cash? In the Depression. Diversify farther, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Well, in this case, they had a daughter that was of marrying age. So they married off the daughter. Not really. Okay. But the daughter did get married. And her husband brought a diversity of knowledge to the farm. He knew how to make syrup from his childhood. He came in here knowing that they needed cash. He saw this ravine right here and said, right there's the answer. The ravine was full of mature trees. A lot of them were. He convinced them to buy a little bit of equipment. They tried it. He convinced them it was a worthy deal. So for the next year, they went to the beach almost every day. Wait a minute, going to the beach and you needed money? They went to the beach and they worked. Beach sand, beach gravel. In a farm, they made all those blocks on the beach. They brought them up and put the building together. Meanwhile, Mr. Chellberg, using his respect in the community, was able to borrow money to buy the equipment needed. Imagine the kind of respect you have to be able to borrow money in the Depression. But he did. In 1935, they were in full production.
They take their axe. Let's say that's a maple tree. I go up to the maple tree. You know what maple trees were. As a child, you know which ones were maples. Chop a V into the tree. Runs on into a basket. Bring the basket of sap over to where you have a trough. You take your full basket of sap, you pour it into your cooking vessel here. And then we have to get rid of the water, and the only way we have to get rid of the water is by adding hot rocks. If you add hot rocks, it causes some of the sap to turn into steam and to go away. And that's how you get the sap hot. At some point you're going to have maple syrup, but there's no way to store maple syrup, so you had to cook it further. Because you're not going to want to have, you might have maple syrup for a day, but you're going to need to have maple products for a month, for 2 months, until the springtime comes and you collect some more food.
See, from the Native American to here, early settler, they had metal, okay, they had metal, and they have glass here. So that's a big deal, that's a big deal. The efficiency of it, the method, if they just had one kettle, they would have started with about 40 gallons, and they would have ended up with about 1 gallon of syrup. If they had several, they might have got a kind of a system going where they just kept going. They start with 40. As you see, it looks a lot like water. When that reduced down to about half, they might transfer it over to here where it's about 20, and they could start again. So that was pretty neat. Here, you see a slight change in color, very slight, not much at all. That's kind of caramelizing. The sugars are burning a little bit on the sides of the pan, and that's where you get your color. You transfer it over here, and you really start seeing it. I mean, now it's really starting to get to where it's syrup. And it actually was a little while ago. I had to pour some sap in there because it was kind of doing for show. So, yeah. And then from here, they would transfer it into the jars, the glass, and that was important that they could store it that way, and they didn't have to necessarily take down the sugar. They would have, but they would have that option as well.
Bottom part, the brown part, is the furnace. We've got wood on the end here. This is where the firebox is. We've got wood here burning away. This pan is sitting right on top of the fire. But the heat comes up, it also goes all the way across along here. The smoke goes out the chimney. Okay? So it's nice and clean in here. You've got your water vapor, but you don't have smoke. You don't have leaves, you don't have dirt. Okay, it's much nicer. We bring sap in at this corner, and this runs through the evaporator pan. Now, you're evaporating the water. When you make maple syrup, you're not making anything. What you're doing is boiling off 39 gallons of water, and what's left is maple syrup. You do that with this evaporator pan, which has a good surface area to boil the water off faster. And so that we put the sap in here, and as the water evaporates, the sap changes density, and it will actually move through these sections. And we've got connectors over on this side, pipes on this side, so we can control it, and it will actually go into these finishing pans. The pans here are fluted, more surface area for the fire. Here they're flat. We're getting close to syrup. We don't want any grooves. That's going to keep the syrup where we can't clean it. Okay, so it's got to be very clean, flat. So these are flat. These are the finishing pans. We don't have as much heat here. Well, we don't have. That's the hottest part. This is still hot. This is going to be boiling. When it becomes syrup, it's at 219 degrees. 7 degrees hotter than boiling water. That's why you're boiling water off, but the sap is staying. But it's still boiling. 219 degrees. We check it with a hydrometer for density, and then we can tap it off.
Reach in here, get the spile out of there. You want the little bump on the top. Okay. Where's the little bump at? Is that the right hole? Go down, tap it in there. Tap, tap, tap. Not too hard.
No. First came here and visited this area in the 1850s and built a wood house here. After they had cleared the property, they worked for the Baileys when they first came over and helped clear the timber and everything because the Bailey family was selling it to the railroads into Chicago, and then they purchased this and started farming here. The original house burned in the 1880s, so they built this one out of brick, poured brick, and there's a brick on the outside of the house. You can see it says 1885. This room in here was redone in the 1930s, and the fireplace and stuff was put in at that time. It originally was a 3 rooms. The kitchen was built on in the 1901 to 1903. This was the kitchen here up until then. We're showing this bedroom now because we can't take you upstairs with the bed.
Milk cookies, and I'm using maple syrup, and there's my maple syrup in there that I'm using for sweetener. I have no sugar in my cookies. So everything we're making here today is sweetened with maple syrup. Even my barbecue sauce on my pork.
Most of the people who do this are traditionalists, and they want a wood-burning furnace, and they want to use the wood. They want to do it the way it was. Chellberg did this in '35. It's in the height of the Depression. It was a good move for them. Senate made 80 gallons, sent to Chicago, $4 a gallon. That was a good business venture. Paid the taxes, bought the flour, and so forth. They paid off what they borrowed. Actually, the senior, Mr. Chellberg, who had been here for quite a while, he was very well thought of, and so he had excellent credit. And so he could. Somebody said, "Well, how did they buy this stuff? It's in the middle of the Depression." Well, that's because the senior, Mr. Chellberg, had excellent credit, so they bought it. And I don't think it took them very long to pay it back off either. When you're shipping to Chicago, you know.
Oh yeah.
So it was very worthwhile.